And I kept thinking about Hawaii and feeling when I had left after college, being like, there's not that opportunity for me here. And so
Yeah.
I kept thinking, okay, well, why can't there be this opportunity?
From RISEHI, this is Why Not Me, a show about Kama'aina creators, entrepreneurs, and community leaders. The behind the scenes stories of how they got to where they are and the valuable lessons they learned along the way. I'm your host, Gabe Ame, and in this episode, we chat with Meli James, a serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Mana Up, an accelerator program helping Hawaii brands become global brands. Meli shares her mission behind Mana Up and explains why it's important for Kama'aina-owned brands to be the ones creating an authentic narrative for Hawaii. All right, I want to welcome to the show Meli James from Mana Up. How you doing, Meli?
Good. How are you? Thanks, Gabe.
Doing awesome. So Meli James, you're co-founder of Mana Up, and you are helping a lot of Hawaii small businesses scale and become global brands, which is very important. But we want to talk about that more. But I kind of want to go back to your early days of really jumping into entrepreneurship, right? And so you're born and raised in Hawaii. You moved away to college, and then in your late 20s, I guess you're in the hospitality industry, right? Trying to get in there, and then you kind of made a transition and became an entrepreneur. So why don't you tell everybody your first entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I graduated from college and, really didn't feel like there was opportunity for me in Hawaii, and felt like I, had to move to the mainland, which, I don't think is necessarily true, but I think it was true how I felt years ago, which is some of the work that I do today is to help to try to create more different opportunity in the islands. But I kind of followed the career path in hospitality as that was what my degree was in. It didn't feel right to me. And so I started working with a life coach and looking at the types of things I was good at, what I wasn't good at, what I liked doing, what I didn't like doing. But for me, I was in the hospitality industry and then something just really didn't feel right to me. So as I was working with my coach, really started to hone in on like, how did I slice and dice like parts of things I liked, parts of things I didn't like with all the different experiences I had had already. Through that process, I started thinking about, what were things I liked? I thought technology was interested. I was living in Silicon Valley. Apps actually weren't a thing yet because the iPhone didn't exist yet.
What year is this to give people context?
This was in 2006, 2007. We started the idea for Nervino, which was kind of like at the end of 06. We launched it first as a mobile website. So it was called Nervino. It was a wine rating website and wine review. So it was kind of like your little black book for wine where you could review the wines you were having, where and when you were having them, as well as get access to reviews and information that would help you make a better purchasing decision. So it was really game-changing for us was when the iPhone launched and the App Store launched and iTunes existed, where people actually felt safe putting their credit card on a mobile website, as before they wouldn't, right? It was just very sketchy. But people trusted Apple, people trusted iTunes, people trusted the App Store. So they would put their credit card in and they could just purchase apps at will. And we became one of those apps. We were a $4 app, a paid app, and we ended up becoming the number one wine app on the iTunes Store, a top 100 overall paid app and top 10 lifestyles app, and staff pick, I think, twice, and featured in every single Apple store nationwide.
I guess what was the biggest takeaway from that best learning experience from that first entrepreneurship venture?
I think like you put it well, like I kind of married these different elements of things I liked to create an opportunity that didn't exist prior. So it wasn't that there was some template or game plan or checklist where I was like, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to go do all these things and that's going to mean success for me. It really is you're creating your own plan and really having to think about how am I creating value in the world, or what's a pain point that I've felt or that my communities felt that I think people would value. And so I think the biggest takeaway I took was I really made a big leap of faith, and I had savings, I quit my job, and I think really quickly as I burned through those savings, I realized I was starting to have to make decisions out of desperation versus being strategic. One thing I would have done differently was, try to keep a part-time job or like consulting or something with the previous work I had done, or see if there was a way for me to not be working, full time where I didn't have any time to work on my startup, but maybe figure out a way to get my basics covered so that I was in a good place to be strategic, as opposed to really trying to get really creative as to how I was going to make ends meet as I was continuing to build my startup.
So it doesn't have to be necessarily one or the other. I'm going to lose. I either got to have the safety of having a standard job and not do the risk thing of starting your own business, or just jump in to start your own business. You can actually do both and do your business as a side hustle until you feel like you've got the traction you need to make that additional leap of faith, right?
Yep, exactly. And it's like, these are like the two sides of the spectrum. It's not, you only have this one job that's like you're bored at and you hate, and you've got no abilities to be entrepreneurial at all. And then on this side, it's like you go for broke and you go for to create some startup and you have no idea what you're going to do and you're just like going for it. There's all these things in the middle that I think really test out your hypothesis, your value proposition, and really test out your risk tolerance, because that's really important as you enter into the entrepreneurial world. You know, as an entrepreneur, you have to kill what you eat. You know, there's no paycheck that comes every 2 weeks. So you have to be creating value in the world to be making a living.
So you were living in the center of the technology world that we know in Silicon Valley, and then you decided to move home. Why make the move home?
So, I'd kind of fallen in love in Silicon Valley with the idea around entrepreneurship, startups, innovation, as I was in Silicon Valley and had a really great experience building my own companies. And I kept thinking about Hawaii and feeling, when I had left after college, being like, there's not that opportunity for me here. And so I kept thinking, okay, well, why can't there be this opportunity? And I started seeing these glimmers of hope around more startup and innovation happening, like the Box Jelly opened, which is in Kaka'ako. There was a startup weekend that had happened. And so I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. Let me move back. I started thinking about, well, how do we start building an innovation ecosystem and what could that look like? So, kind of long story short, I started working with a couple of the accelerators. And an accelerator is a program that provides resources, mentorship, and access to capital for startups to help them significantly make progress within a very specific amount of time. And it was really interesting to be on the mentorship side as opposed to actually being an entrepreneur myself, but also having that mindset, having been an entrepreneur, really knowing more of the resources and questions and mindset that a lot of these entrepreneurs had, which I think was really helpful as I was building out some of these programs. But I started looking around and I, started thinking about, how do we broaden how we view innovation here? How do we look at regional strengths for Hawaii, unfair advantages, and ways that we can leverage competitive advantage that not only makes sense for companies to start here, but to stay here and thrive here? How do we go beyond just technology and broaden and really looking at potentially products and kind of boiling down what I thought was an unfair advantage that wasn't being leveraged was the brand of Hawaii.
And so we know there's a lot of, big brands out there that they look like they represent Hawaii, but they're really not from Hawaii, right? How do we help these great brands that are from Hawaii, that know Hawaii, that create that authentic narrative of Hawaii? How do we get them more exposed, and how do we help them grow? And that's exactly what you're doing with this Accelerator Program, Mana Up. You and your co-founder started this a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, right? And since then, you've had probably close to 50 companies 51. From Hawaii. Yeah. And through your program. And so for those out there, what's involved with the Accelerator Program in terms of if you're picked as one of these companies from Hawaii, and what's the length of time and what's their commitment and what are they learning out of this program?
Yeah, so we thought carefully about the criteria of the types of companies that we felt could really maximize on an opportunity like this. So one, they have to be headquartered in Hawaii, as you said. And then, looking at global trends happening, especially on authenticity, connection to culture, especially with millennials and Gen Z, people do want to know who the founder is. What's the story? What are the ingredients? Let me get on Instagram. What's their mission? Who are they? And those are all really great things happening around the world that we can, as local Hawaii companies, leverage because we do have authentic stories because we are here in our community. So that the headquarters is important, the consumer packaged goods. So if anyone doesn't know what a CPG company is a company that is a consumer packaged good, but it is in retail, value add food products like beef jerky, honey, chocolate, stuff like that, as well as health and beauty, like face soaps, lotions, things like that, or home, like duvet comforters or pillowcases, candles, things like that. And they actually have to be over 100,000 annual revenue to get into our program. To answer your question about what we do, it's a 6-month program where we do a lot of skills-based learning. We're doing a lot right now with direct-to-consumer e-commerce and digital marketing, as we're learning very much with COVID happening right now and tourism being very down. We can't rely on retail and we can't rely on tourism to be moving and creating the business. There's a big world out there and many people love Hawaii, and the brand of Hawaii is stronger than just inside of Hawaii. People love the brand of Hawaii. It is globally loved. And so when you're looking at e-com, you're looking at servicing a global market or even a national market, that opens up a whole new customer base and creates a lot more opportunity for exports and bringing new dollars into our state, which is very important. People shouldn't have to physically come here to get introduced to our amazing entrepreneurs and products, nor do they have to physically be here to purchase them. And then we also have leadership talks where, it's about that mindset shift and being able to think big. The 6-week sprint we're in the midst of right now. We're doing it remote via virtual with everything going on. Then we do a 4-week implementation break where we continue to meet with them one-on-one and really help solve scaling challenges.
When you grow up in Hawaii and that's all you know, it's so easy to underestimate the brand of Hawaii until you travel and you realize that everyone in the world knows and they love Hawaii. Right? It really goes to show how strong of a brand Hawaii has. And so you talked about focusing on helping your companies and brands with digital storytelling. With so many choices a consumer has in the world, how do you resonate and when there's so many options? And why don't you kind of touch on that, like how the power of really being able to be a storyteller and people, gravitating towards that story just as much as the product itself?
I think the story piece and authenticity, connection to culture is something that's a lot more important now than it may have been 5 or 10 years ago. And so how do we leverage that and looking at all this content that's really direct at your fingertips? Like you think about my story back in 2006 or 2007 when I started my first app. This was when like data on phones was actually becoming a thing. Now, 10, 13 years later, everyone has an iPhone. Everyone has data at their fingertips. And when you think about that power, you think about when you're in the store, you're looking at a product, and now you can just whip out your iPhone and pull up their Instagram. And in about 30 seconds, visually and looking at these key messages, be able to start to understand who this company is and who are the founders and what do they stand for, and does that resonate with me? So it's really about this direct to consumer and brands being able to directly speak to their customers now, as opposed to having to be on Bloomingdale's shelf or something where you're in someone else's real estate and you only get so much. And really looking at, how do you help your customer get to know you more, get to know the brand more, get to know what you stand for more, and really get snapshot into that curiosity about Hawaii that may not be the obvious things that people spoke about back in the day, right? It's not just about the hoop girl and the hibiscus and diamond
Aloha shirt, yeah.
Aloha shirt, yeah. And Elvis or whatever else it's been in the past. Like now we have the power to take back that narrative and get very creative about how we share and what we share and how we open that door for curiosity more with our consumers that are, by the way, are global. How are they getting to know Hawaii better?
I want to switch over to the part of the segment where we share an Instagram pic from the past and you get to explain it. So what are we looking at here?
I always kind of do a big trip as I'm shifting gears in life. And one of the big trips I did was to trek 21 days in the Nepalese Himalayan mountains. But, it was really an opportunity for me to test myself and push myself and really get to know myself better. This picture actually is from Mont Blanc, a trip that I did a year ago, I believe. Yeah, a year ago. And it was another opportunity for me to take a pause. Mana Up had really been growing in great ways and new revenue channels and new opportunities to support local business. And I really felt like it was another time for me to go on a trip and take time to just get to know myself and test myself. And I actually thought at the time that I was going to have all this time to journal and get to know myself better, but it really was more around that physical. And that's actually my cousin there. He came on the trip too. And just push myself. And I look at mountains very differently now, but being able to just look at them and say, oh, I can do that. And I love this sign that was in this cafe after we finished the trek, is because in the end, you won't remember the time spent working in the office or mowing the lawn. Climb that mountain. So I think this is a really awesome just snapshot of opportunities that we have, and at moments that we have to get to know ourselves better and to take a pause. And those have been very important for me in my life as I've continued to push and not know what's going to happen when I build things. Being able to just have those moments with myself, as at the end of the day, you have to have a very good relationship with your inner self to have that confidence to continue to push and again, to enjoy that journey.
So we're in the part of the show, we got the speed round challenge, right? So I get to ask you a few questions. First thing that pops in your head, last place you ordered takeout from.
Island Vintage Cafe in Waikiki at the Royal Hawaiian.
Last movie you watched.
Interestingly, a movie called Finding Joe.
Favorite way to relax.
I love to long distance swim in the ocean. So I love to go out to Kaimana or at the Kahala Beach and just swim.
Something that makes you laugh.
My two little nephews, they just crack me up.
If you could learn any new skill, what would it be?
Well, I'd love to learn how to kiteboard.
If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
And last question. What piece of advice do you have for high school or college graduate from Hawaii trying to make it in the world today?
I'd say a big piece of advice would be continue to always growing your network. Just always continue to grow it, because as you get older and you go into different experiences, you'll never realize how connected we all are, and how just having a good reputation and continuing to grow and pushing yourself. Like don't just hang out with the same friends like every weekend, or really, if you have an interest or there's a sport activity or something like that, I'd say really push yourself to expand your network and get to know people that are outside of your obvious norm.
And something to that too, it's not just expand your network, but get out of your comfort zone, right? In order to expand your network, you gotta be able to get out of your own comfort zone first.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're the networking queen, I know, so you can speak to that. But
I met you networking, Gabe.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So I just want to say thank you for being on the show, and Meli James, great job helping build these small local companies and making them, more established, and hopefully making them a worldwide brand if that's what they want to be. So I think the last thing we said is that, hey, gotta keep continuing to climb the mountain, right?
Let's
awesome.
Mana up. Let's
There we go.
Mana up.
Meli James, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Gabe. Aloha.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, bye.